Welcome to Translation Confidential. This is Peter Argondizzo and Patrick Daley. Thank you for joining us for episode 137, Challenges and Opportunities for Freelance Translators in the Gig Economy and the Age of AI. I hadn't talked about AI in a few weeks, so we came right back to that thing, didn't we now, Patrick?
Yep, can't escape it.
Can't escape it. And hoping, this is going to be one of those crescendo stories, right? We're gonna depress you at first. For those of you that are translators, agency owners, we're gonna go down a deep dark path, but I promise you this is a story of hope. Patrick, let's get started. Nobody ever needs to translate another fiction book ever again, apparently. Tell us about it.
I found an article from The Guardian for an AI translation service that just launched, and they are charging $100 per book to use its services. And then the translation community, I should say, was pretty outraged, it seems, from this article. They're really emphasizing the need for humans in the process of, since it is like a creative translation, literary translation, that AI will very likely fall short in kind of nuance, tone, all the fun things that when you're deep diving into translation are super important. One part of the article I found super interesting was the firm that's releasing this service said they conducted extensive blind testing of its tool. So they sent out their AI translations alongside human translations, but didn't tell their reviewers which ones were which. And they said the feedback consistently showed that readers could not reliably distinguish between them. So that was very interesting. I think it's interesting to show that readers could not distinguish between them. They didn't say language professionals, because I think you'd get a very different answer if you blind tested a linguist with an AI translation versus a human produced translation.
Well, and I have so many questions, right? So I don't know what they did, but I can presume what they may have done. And what they may have done, because again, if you don't understand the technology, you don't understand truly like how to create a double blind. I mean, if they used previously translated works to train an engine and then took the same book and said, okay, translate it now, it would literally be almost identical to the original. I mean, so I don't know what they did. We don't know what types of books. I'd love to see what this engine's going to do with Quidditch and everything else in the Harry Potter books. I mean, I don't know. For me, like, it's not an academic paper. It's an article in The Guardian, right? So we did extensive testing. Well, what the hell does that mean? I think, Patrick, your doubts are exactly correct. And guys, these headlines grab clicks. They're amazing. Wow, no one's ever going to translate another fiction book again, because you can do it for $100. Holy cow, look at that. And my point with that, there's a few points, right? Is that literary translation is kind of an animal all of its own. Those translators live in a different community than the translators typically live in a community that does corporate translation like we do. So I don't believe it.
Yeah, there's an interesting quote from a translator that they got a comment from as well, and it says they're really worried about all the new AI, and then they put in quotes translation services, and they mention how that gives the appearance that a good translation is instant, and that also we're kind of striving for good enough translation instead of good translation.
Well, and it's funny, right? This is one of those camps that I think, or one of those places that I'm just like, I just don't know how AI assists, right? I mean, with a lot of corporate content, right? Like if you're thinking of knowledge-based articles that are relatively low risk, good enough might be okay, right? So maybe an AI translation with a human in the loop, or even if you have hundreds of thousands of articles, they're like, holy cow, how are we going to tackle this? And what you do is AI first, and then have a human come back around and do all 100,000 articles over time. And there's so many different ways to attack a project like that. But nobody at, XYZ Enterprise, a Fortune 100 company, is going, hey, I'm going to read these knowledge-based articles, and it's going to be absolutely titillating. I'm going to be so excited about reading these knowledge-based articles that I'm going to take these home with me. These are so great. Well, that's far different than when you go to the bookstore and pick up a fiction book, right? I mean, if the answer to the question is that the publishers only want to sell books in the source language and not in the translated languages, then this is the way to do it, right? Hey, we're going to spend $100 on a translation that should probably cost, 10 grand or 15 grand or 20 grand and take someone 3 months to do. I mean,
yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time,
It's
right?
illogical.
That's using the right tool for the job. I know you mentioned more of a B2B setting, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who would be comfortable putting out a press release that's only machine translation with no human in the loop, because that's a public facing image of your company and you don't want to put out garbage when you do that. So like there's very different use cases of when you can use all these different kind of tiers or levels of translation services.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I think the idea that, like we've talked about as well, people are going to judge you on their mistakes. I just had a conversation with someone the other day. You could look at a body of work and 99.9% of it is good. It's quite good. But then that 0.9%, right? There's a few god-awful mistakes in there, because that's amazingly when it's just AI. It's the kind of stuff that happens. It is a incredible misunderstanding of the source content, and it completely misses the mark. People are going to judge you on that last piece. Imagine you go out for dinner, you had a pretty nice dinner. Hey, this is pretty good. They give you dessert, and it's actually raw liver. You're going to say, this meal was crap. It's the same with translation, right? In the sense that, especially something like this, that's a work that's meant to entertain you. It's meant to be something that you look forward to engaging in, and you screw it up. Similar like to when we watch a movie, right? You watch a movie and you're like, in the last scene, you actually see the grip. You actually see the camera or something. You're like,
Starbucks cup in the Game of Thrones episode.
Yes, exactly. You're like, what? It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So, but I think it's good, Patrick. I think this story helps frame the discussion we're going to have today. And like I said, it's going to be very Dante-esque. We're going to descend into Inferno, only to come out into Paradise a little bit later. It's funny because I have a Dante reference a little bit later that I wanted to talk about as well. So let's get started. I mean, obviously, here's one little bit of good news, then we'll go to the bad news, is that the language service industry is growing. I don't care if you read Slater, you read NIMSY, you look at whatever think tank that's out there for translation, you're saying translation services as a whole, or translation requirements, are growing. Now, there's some debate, right, into like where that work is going. Is it going to agencies? Is it going to these TAF, translation as a feature type companies, that people are just chucking it over the fence and it gets translated? But it's growing. But many freelancers are saying that they earn less, and think it's because they're having to do more work to earn the same amount of money. They're having to do more words, process more words. Hopefully it's a lighter lift. If it's not a lighter lift, then it's an incorrect use of the AI, right? Or machine translation, or whatever format they're using. We're at that point now that if the translation, these are the comments you see, right? It's more work to edit this than it was if I was doing it from scratch. Well, then if that's true, then the machine translation and the AI were used improperly. But that kind of sets it, Patrick, I think, is that
I think
it's growing, but the pay that people are getting for the same type of work is less.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note, not only is the demand growing, but I think the demand for speed is also growing, which is another kind of layer on top of it. Not only is there likely more to translate out there, but buyers want it faster. So that's another pressure on the industry that kind of gets pushed down all the way through the whole chain of agencies, all the way down to freelancers.
Absolutely. And I think what that does, right, is it creates room for these tools. So there are many agencies, there are many companies, there are many software providers that do have the TAF feature that say, well, I need to marry the technology and the people onto the backside to actually do the work. Think of like Phrase, and I can't think of the other one right now. Crowd-in. Oh, there we go. SmartCat. Those are tools that are a technology, but then requires people on the other end to finish. So it's sort of like Upwork for translation, or you name it, and it's speed. You're 100% right. People are saying, hey, I want to upload a project. I want to get a price. I want to hit approve, and I hope to get it back soon. So it's creating opportunity among those challenges, in the sense that if you're a freelance translator today, right, there's a few spots you can go to start earning some money pretty quickly, but some of the jobs are probably not going to be awesome, right? I mean, I think that that's kind of the case, but you know, the whole goal today is that I just want to help people understand how freelancers and maybe agencies can actually thrive and adapt. So it's tough, but let's dive down into those challenges, Patrick. Why don't you get us started?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, kind of framing it as the Upwork for translators, for lack of a better term, is a good analogy. But I think that kind of poses an issue as well of like basically anyone can sign up to do translation, and that can be a good or bad. I know certain agencies have certain ISO requirements where people have to have a certain amount of qualifications, but not every agency has all those ISO requirements. So I think that's something as a buyer, just being aware of that, of, you know, we've talked about it plenty of times, of who's actually going to be doing the work, that who's going to be translating the thing that you send in for the agency to translate.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, that's creating some rate pressure, right? I mean, so you've got an overcrowded market with more translators, and it's creating rate pressure, and especially in the languages like Spanish, right? Where, again, we've talked about this multiple times, that if you took all the Spanish translators that are in our community and then you totaled all the other languages, there'd still be more Spanish translators. So Spanish especially, it's just, guys, this is economics. It's not anything.
I mean, it's geography for us too, right?
Right.
We're in the US, we're near a lot of, 98% of the Spanish speaking world.
Is just south of us, right? So exactly, it's here, and they're here in our country as well. I mean, you know, that it's widely spoken. So it's very important language in our environment, in our workplace, in our schools, everywhere. So that's why there's just so much Spanish out there, and there's that much competition. But you know what I think is the problem with all of this is, like, it's that ease of use thing, Patrick. It's that illusion of ease of use, right? And I think your Guardian article touches on that a little bit. It's like, wow, I can just take this whole book and chuck it at it, and 10 minutes later, I've got a translation. This is amazing. It's that black magic thing, right? It's like, this is great. And then it sort of dumbs you down into saying, oh, should I be concerned about what it actually says? Should I be concerned? So I think, you know, that as a client, you know, as a buyer of translation, it's tough right now. And in our pre-show prep, I was telling Patrick about a post I saw on LinkedIn where, you know, the header on the post was, Disney's using MTPE. Can you believe it? They're terrible people. You know, and MTPE, again, for the machine translation with post-editing. So machine translation with a human in a loop to review. And they're like, how is this news? I mean, Netflix has been doing this for a really long time and churning out some really terrible captions. I mean, we did a show during the pandemic about Squid Game. It was all the rage because they were like, these captions are terrible. Like, who did these? More than likely they were I think they were. It was shown they were machine translated, right? So, but the point of that is that everybody was really upset, and this whole thing was going down this kind of rabbit hole of like, hey, maybe we should be plumbers, or, you know, an electrician or something, because boy, this sucks. And just
the trades are back.
The trades are back. We've got translators who've never picked up a wrench in their life before going, maybe I should be a plumber. I mean, guys, this is super, super defeatist. I just don't, I get it. Things are changing, and we'll talk about some of the things that we're hoping people can focus on.
But that brings the whole speed conversation back, as you think of, you know, whatever streaming service you use. If you click on subtitles, you've probably got 40 options of what to pick from. And, you know, they kind of made it the standard when they release something on these streamers, it's got to have subtitles in all these languages. So, I mean, if you think of a 1 hour TV show that's got 10 episodes in a season, that's 10 hours times 40 languages times how many translators. Like, if you do it full human workflow, that's going to take forever. But if you do introduce AI at the right spot, or machine translation, or whatever tool, that speed to market is just going to increase dramatically, which is in theory, to me, they're saying, okay, speed to market is more important than quality, which is a business decision that they've made. Like that's where they're kind of sticking the stake in the ground and they're saying, we'd rather get it out there fast than be 100% right.
Absolutely. And I think our goal as folks in this industry, whether we're translation service providers, language solutions integrators, as the folks are now saying, or translators, we should think about our customers as well. Like the last post in this long chain of death and doom in this LinkedIn post I was talking about, I forget the gentleman's name, or it might have even been a gal, I don't recall, but it was a really good post that said, I don't know, starting to think this is hard on customers too, because they don't understand this technology. And perhaps it's our role to help educate them so they understand the risks and how to mitigate. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what we've been saying. I'm like, I need to reach out. If I can find that post, I need to reach out to that person, because that's an amazing response to this long trail of death and doom, is that, guys, we should put ourselves in our clients' shoes for a minute. You know, they're struggling with, and it's not a political discussion, but they're struggling with, holy cow, tariffs are going to kill us in the international markets. We're going to spend a lot more money this year. Now I have to do translation. How do I do that? I don't have much budget. I don't have much time. They're hit with an onslaught of decisions. And then along comes some TAF program that's like, hey, you can just flick a switch and you got translation. Sounds great. Well, they may not know. So for us, this is our opportunity, guys. This is where we have to help educate and say, hey, let's think about this for a minute. You know, this is an operator's manual for a defibrillator. You can kill someone, or hey, this is a really low level research project. You're trying to get a gist of something. It's in French and you're trying to figure out like what this device does, and it's a 100-page manual and it's in your environment and it's research. It's from your product research group. Okay, yeah, maybe use some AI. Okay, great. That sounds good. Let's help them understand which tools to use, Pat. How many times, we talk about communication and which tools. Those are probably the two things.
Yeah,
but
let's have AI analyze all our transcripts and tell us what we talk about too much.
Exactly. And it'll tell us it's communication and choosing the right tool. So anyway, but I think, that's, I guess, to sum up the negatives, I guess, is that, the markets, tools, platforms, whatever, make it very easy, both easy for translators to come in, creating price pressure, both easy for customers to submit projects and get translations quicker. And all of this has impact on pricing of the service, as well as costing of the jobs and the work that the people do. So, I mean, that's kind of the basis of it. And then the AI stuff, Patrick, we got a few challenges that are related more to AI rather than the structure. Maybe we can go through those quickly.
Yeah, I think one we've talked a lot about is a translator's reaction to machine translations and the quality of that if they are post-editing. Like you said earlier, it's like, oh, I could have done this faster if I just started from scratch. So I feel like we hear that all the time. I think we talked about it too, and with the Guardian article, is that translators are reporting a lot of kind of fear and trepidation around like AI taking their job, which I think is likely overblown. I feel like I've heard that a ton regardless of industry, but I've really yet to see anything like astonishingly cool that AI can do that can replace human output thus far. So yeah, those are two big ones that I've heard.
And, I think a big thing to note too is I think I should have found that link, but it was a Wall Street Journal article late last week, and it was a study they did at the enterprise level on a series of AI projects that were geared specifically to reduce labor, and only 25% of them were successful, right? And we talked about some of the really bad ones, like the Klarna one, where they're like, oh, we don't need customer support anymore. This is so amazing. We'll just let chatbots run the world. And of course, their customers were in straight up revolt. So they had to scramble and rehire everyone. So I think, I guess let's start to focus on the positive. And maybe that's a good segue in the sense that I think this is where I think you can embrace the technology, right? And you can say, hey, there's a rising demand for pretty much everything, right? In terms of whether we're talking about translation or Patrick, in your world, like copywriting and things that, again, copywriting's another one that's very much kind of in this AI lane. How about learning how to use the technology, right? I mean, I think that that's a huge thing. And I think embrace the fact, like as a translator, even with all these challenges, the beautiful part about this is that because of the technology, man, you can work from home. You could work from on vacation. You could log in for 5 hours if like, it's a rainy day. We're just going to hang out and chill. I'm going to log in and do 3 or 4 hours worth of work. You're
Or
able
I
to,
lost a bunch at the casino last night and I need to make some money.
need to earn some money back. Exactly. It's like you can turn the money machine on, and you can do so more effectively now than you ever could. So, I mean, I think that deal, Patrick.
Yeah, I think another interesting point too is that I think you'll see more language pairs becoming normal with, like I said, like you flip through any streamer and you click captions, you see like 40 options. I think early days of streamer, you get 4, 10 maybe, but now it's like everyone wants everything in every language. Like some of those more languages of limited diffusion, I think you'll start to see them tick up where there's more translation requests for those languages where we haven't seen them in the past.
Absolutely. And along those lines, like if you think of, like I'm thinking of into English translation, there are many subject types and project types that are not AI ready. Think of, these large legal documents that are not in an electronic layer. It's a PDF of something from 12 years ago, and there is no electronic layer. So you need to translate that. OCR can only do so much. Like that's a place. Or if you're in a specialty, like if you're in legal, you specialize in legal, you specialize in medical, technical, like those are things that are not easily AI replaced, right? So I think, narrowing your niche. I mean, I can think of too, we do a lot of schoolwork, a lot of these IEPs, just like I've lamented the fact that these folks don't want to work with us to provide us something that's in a text layer. Well, that makes it better for translators because it's not so easy to AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are really important. I don't know. I think that's for me, that's part of that message, I guess. Anything else on that, Patrick? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, to your point of specialization, I think another thing is like signing yourself up for difficult or maybe weird projects and like figuring it out, I think is super cool too, of like, oh, I didn't think I could do this thing, but just like maybe accepting some of those more difficult jobs, because I think you can say like, hey, this is more difficult, like I need to charge more hours or more words or whatever it is. But when you have that backing of like, okay, you just sent me a PDF and I have to like literally manually type all this stuff out, you've got like your backup of why you can charge a premium for that kind of service, because you can't just chuck it into a tool and chuck it out. You have to, you as the person have to do that work.
I love that. And Patrick, I think, going in specifically a little bit more into the weeds as well is, again, be part of the solution rather than the problem, and realize that, we've talked about many times, the little dark secret that the TAF guys don't want to talk about is that, you have to retranslate everything every single time. There's no link to CAT tools. That's why you have to work with an LSI, right? A language solutions integrator. I'm just getting used to saying that. A language solutions integrator, so that they can marry translation memory to AI. So number one, you get more consistent results. And number two, you're not reinventing the wheel every time. If you go through a client review and approval cycle, you want to use the same thing you used last time. But as a translator, this is me. I'm thinking, hey, you know what I'm going to start doing? What I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating glossaries for my projects. And I'm going to try to upsell the client to say, hey, listen, I can create a glossary for you that then you can use to help train the AI a little bit better. Hey, listen, I'd like to create a style guide for you based on, my language pair, English to Spanish, English to Italian, whatever it is. Hey, I'd like to help you make the tools work a little bit better. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but as a buyer, I'm going, wow, this person's pretty invested. Yeah, I'm going to compensate them for this work. That's really great. Because again, they're part of the solution.
Yeah, I think you will see that people with a real, or agencies, freelancers, whoever, you can fill in the blank, but those with kind of that strategic approach to how projects are done and not just, yeah, chuck it over the fence and we'll chuck it back to you. But I think those who ask the right questions or present the right solutions will see those benefits in the long run. I think it's kind of towing the line between like, sure, yes, we'll translate anything versus being a bit more consultative of like, okay, where's this going? Who's the audience? Those types of questions help inform like how you tackle a project rather than just being like, okay, here's the document, go do your thing.
Absolutely. And I think, your new role, and again, many of us are ready to accept it, and I think many of us are not, but you are a consultant. Listen, we've been doing this for 30 years. I know many of the translators that listen to the show or that we deal with have also a ton of experience. It's not wasted. Like you can't buy that. So use that tool to help create these other resources that make you more endearing to the end user, to the client. I think there's opportunity here. I mean, there's an advantage because just like the stuff we were talking about in Patrick's Guardian article, right, is context, emotion, humor, cultural knowledge. AI sucks at that. It's like really bad. That's where you can help. We've had shows about transcreation, and you know how I all feel about that term. Not my favorite term, because transcreation just means doing a good job doing translation, right? We should be doing that all the time, not just when a client says I need transcreation. But marketing, legal, creative work, in spite of what the Guardian says, it's going to do a crappy job with fiction. I'm sorry, it just is. That's where you can provide your value. So focus on that stuff. Yeah, you're probably going to lose some of the lower value stuff that you did. Yep, fine. Focus on the higher value stuff. I think that's really the goal.
Yeah, and I think like even outside of the translation process, like wherever you can deploy AI to reduce things that either you're unmotivated by or you don't like doing or whatever, like that's how I view my use of AI in my current role. It's like we've had people write GPTs to sound like them and say like, respond to this email for me. It won't give the full response, but it will write back the reply. It's like, how much time did I just save not spending a half hour writing this email? When AI gave me a first draft, I tightened it up and then I shipped it out, and it took me 5 minutes instead of 30 now. It's like all those little bits of time savings add up to free you up for the things that you like doing or revenue generating activities or whatever it might be. But I think even outside of like the translation, the act of translation itself, like freelancers are all running a business basically when they're doing this. So it's like, what other things can I deploy AI to do that will make my life easier or free me up to do more translation work?
I love that, Patrick. I think that's a really, really great example. It's like, so in running the business of your practice, of your translation practice, you can deploy AI to help you get rid of some administrative work so you can become more efficient.
Right.
That makes total sense.
Can you write something that says like, when I submit the job, ship my invoice back to the translation provider, of like, just have that fire automatically or whatever it is. But that's like a quick example just right off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other things of like maybe end of month to run a report that says what invoices haven't been paid, so you can quickly go follow up on those or whatever it might be. There's lots of ways to, I know a lot of people don't go into translation because they like running their own business. They do it because they like translating. So how can you kind of get the help that you need in those areas that you may not love doing?
I love that, Patrick. And this is a great segue because that's really an action step for our listeners to, hey, here's some things you can try. And I think I mentioned it earlier. I think let's just jump right into that. Embracing continuous learning, right? Never trust a person who says they know everything, because there's no way to know everything. The more you learn, this is my wife's quote, I'm stealing it from her. The more you learn, the more there is to learn, right? It just opens up other avenues for you. So embrace it. Like Udemy or Udemy, I never know how to say this. They have really good like AI classes. Masterclass has some really good AI tracks. The stuff is out there. So get good at it, understand it, figure out how it works. Patrick mentioned creating GPTs. GPTs are like, that's basically like a little trained model that you don't have to educate every time, that you say, all right, I want to create a GPT that helps me respond to emails, and here's 100 emails I've written. That'll take you an afternoon to do that, and that's a great first step.
Yeah, I think you mentioned too, like the professional communities that might be helpful as well. I think ATA or equivalents in other countries are super helpful. Just personally too, like I'm involved in the PMI, which is Project Management Institute, and they have required continuous learning. Once you get a certification, you have to do, I think it's like 60 hours over 3 years of whether it's webinars or live events or whatever it is. But there's kind of that forcing function. It's like, okay, I have to keep a pulse on what's going on in project management. I can't just, take the test one time, be done, and be like, yep, I know everything now, like you said. And there's obviously a huge emphasis on AI in the project management world as well. So I think joining some of those professional communities is kind of a way to force yourself to learn more, or network, or whatever it is. But there's lots of value in being in those communities.
Absolutely. And one thing that I really want to stress as well is using AI ethically, right? So just like there's many that don't want to adopt or think about it, and they have got their head in the sand, and they're saying, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to. There's others that are like, this is awesome. I'm literally just going to use AI for every translation project and kick it back without any Okay, don't do that. So that's going to get you on a blacklist with a lot of agencies in a hurry and a lot of end clients if you're doing that with end clients.
Like, well, I mean, you
can't
think
completely abdicate. You just can't.
Right. Just think of the bell curve, right? Is like, do you want to be in that middle part where everyone's going to have good enough quality and know how to use the AI tools, or do you want to be that 1% on either end that's like, nope, I'm going full AI versus like never touching it? So I think somewhere in the middle is likely your safe bet, where you can carve out the ability to get yourself a lot of work.
100%, like anything, right? Moderation, Patrick. And I think this is an opportunity for you to look at your business or your practice and define your value proposition. What is it that I do for clients? Rethink it. Because I think what happens is we have an identity, and then when a change in our job description happens because of industry forces or environmental forces, it causes angst or anxiety, right? In our own, like, who we identify as, right? So redefine it. Say, hey, I'm a language expert. Now what I provide is my expertise, the 30 years of experience that I have, to help provide the right translation solution, to help choose the right tool for the right moment. So redefine who you are. I think that's a huge, huge piece of this. Like, we have to get comfortable, but it doesn't mean we abdicate. We don't. And again, remember, and I guess let's transition into closing points, and I'll just give you mine because I'm on a roll right now, I guess. Remember that our customers are going through a similar, holy crap, what do I do now type of situation. Again, all those environmental forces, all those, the boss is coming down hard on me. I got to get all this stuff. I have to do 10 more languages than I used to do. Man, I've got this bill that I have to deal with in Canada that says now I have to translate everything. I never used to have to translate everything. Now what do I do? Help them understand how they can achieve that goal with your expertise. So redefine the situation. Don't let the situation define you, is kind of my biggest takeaway from today. Patrick, what is your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how the market is kind of taking shape of, like you said, like all of these solutions exist for a reason. Like I have to believe people are using scale up, scale down, whatever solution they might want, whether it's translation as a feature versus still doing only human translation. And I think all those solutions, like people wouldn't be in business if people weren't using those services. But I think it's important to, if as a freelancer or as a translator, to think, where do I want to sit on that scale of services that I want to offer? And it's okay not to offer everything, but I think you have to kind of have enough wherewithal to think like, okay, I can't avoid AI, so like I can't be stuck on the only humans every single thing. Obviously, we've talked about examples where it's highly regulated and what have you that still have that market, but I think you'll see, we've talked about demand increasing, where I think that demand is kind of in the middle of that scale between just pure AI output versus pure human output. I think it's the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, where you can still do a good chunk of work and still get a fair pay for that, but not be expected to go insanely fast with the work that you're doing. So I think we talked about it. I think the dust will settle kind of somewhere in the middle of all these things in the next 5 to 10 years.
I love it. Well, Patrick, This is not the first time we've spoken about AI. It certainly will not be the last. We will continue to check in on progress of the industry and where things go. But for this episode of Translation Confidential, this is Peter Argondizzo and Patrick Daley signing off.